What happens when the perfect life is a perfect lie? For Isabella Croft, tonight was supposed to be a celebration. At 6 months pregnant, she had the bespoke gown, the doting husband, and a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But instead of walking the red carpet at the year's most exclusive gala, she was locked in her gleaming prison by a doctor's orders she never received. Her husband, the charismatic titan, Andrew Croft, had other plans. And those plans wore a scarlet dress and had a name, Serafina. He thought his pregnant wife was safely tucked away. He was wrong. He never imagined she'd trade her slippers for steel, or that her grand entrance wouldn't be on his arm, but from the sky itself. The silence in the penthouse was a living thing. It breathed in the spaces between the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the foyer and the distant muted symphony of New York City traffic 28 floors below. For Isabella Rossi Croft, the silence had once been peaceful, a soothing balm, after a day spent navigating the city's vibrant chaos. Now, it was suffocating. She stood before the full-length gold-leaf mirror in her dressing room, a hand resting protectively on the gentle, firm swell of her belly. The gown was a masterpiece, a bespoke creation by a designer whose name was spoken in hushed, reverent tones. It was a cascade of midnight blue silk, hand-embroidered with tiny, shimmering silver threads that mimicked a starry night. It had been designed to celebrate her, to celebrate them, to celebrate the new life they were about to bring into the world. The gown was meant for tonight, the annual Metropolitan Legacy Gala, the undisputed pinnacle of the city's social calendar. And it would remain here, unworn, a ghost in her closet. "It's for the best, my love," Andrew had said that morning, his voice a low, convincing purr that had always been able to bend her to his will. He sat on the edge of their enormous bed, his hand stroking her hair as she lay against the pillows. Dr. Evans was very clear. The slightest risk of stress or overexertion is out of the question. Your blood pressure was a little high at the last checkup. Remember? She didn't remember that. She remembered Dr. Evans telling her she was as healthy as a horse and that the baby had a heartbeat like a drum. But Andrew had that way about him, a casual authority that made you question your own memory. He was Andrew Croft, the boy from Queens who had clawed his way to the top of the merciless world of venture capital. His company, Croft Innovations, was the city's darling. He was decisive, brilliant, and utterly convincing. But the gala, it's to honor the new wing of the Children's Hospital Andrew, the wing your company funded. She had tried to argue, her voice small. "I feel perfectly fine. I want to be there to support you. And you support me best by keeping our little ones safe," he'd countered, leaning in to kiss her forehead. His lips were cool. "That's all that matters to me. Forget the gala. It's just a room full of peacocks puffing their chests. I'll go say my piece, accept the plaque, and I'll be home before you know it. I'd skip it entirely if I could. But Alistair Dubois is flying in specifically for it. I have to show face." Alistair Dubois. The name hung in the air. A ruthless old-money billionaire from London, a titan of industry, whose investment Andrew had been chasing for over a year. A partnership with Dubois would catapult Croft Innovations into the global stratosphere. So she had relented. She had allowed herself to be tucked back into bed, placated with promises of a quiet night in, with takeout from her favorite Italian place and a new documentary. It was a convincing performance. Andrew had even called his secretary in front of her, instructing her to cancel Isabella's hair and makeup appointments, his voice laced with the perfect amount of husbandly concern. The lie began to unravel around 3:30 p.m. She'd called Dr. Evans' office to reschedule a routine appointment, and on a whim, she'd mentioned her doctor's orders to stay home. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then the nurse, a kind woman named Martha, had sounded confused. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Croft, Dr. Evans hasn't issued any such orders. In fact, she saw Mr. Croft's name on the Gala's benefactor list and mentioned this morning how wonderful it was that you were feeling well enough to attend." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Isabella's feet. It was a small thing, a tiny tear in the fabric of the reality Andrew had woven for her. But it was enough. Doubt, once planted, grew with the ferocity of a weed. Why would he lie about something so easily verifiable? She spent the next few hours in a daze, her mind racing. It couldn't be. Not Andrew. Their life was perfect. He adored her. He constantly told her she was his anchor, the calm in his storm. The one real thing in a life of artifice. The final brutal confirmation came at 7:15 p.m. Her phone buzzed with a notification from a society blog. She followed a guilty pleasure. The headline read, "Gala glamour arrivals begin at the Met Legacy Ball." And there he was, the first picture in the gallery. Andrew Croft, looking impossibly handsome in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo. His smile was dazzling, a beacon for the paparazzi. And on his arm was a woman. It was not Isabella. The woman was tall, impossibly slender, and poured into a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin. Her hair was a sheet of glossy black, her lips painted the same shade as her gown. She laughed, tipping her head back, a proprietary hand resting on Andrew's chest. The caption identified her: Serafina Dubois, the daughter of Alistair Dubois. The blood drained from Isabella's face, leaving an icy-cold dread in its place. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. The lie about the doctor, the insistence she stay home. It wasn't about her health. It wasn't about the baby. It was about clearing the stage for Serafina. He hadn't just taken a mistress to the gala. He had taken his business Mark's daughter, leaving his pregnant wife at home under false pretenses. She sank onto a velvet ottoman, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The silence of the penthouse was no longer suffocating. It was mocking. Every beautiful object, the abstract paintings they had bought in Soho, the crystal vases, the plush silk rugs, felt like a prop in a meticulously staged play. A play in which she had just discovered she was the fool. Tears welled hot and furious. But as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, the tear-streaked face, the beautiful, useless gown, something else rose through the grief. It was a cold, hard fury. He had not just betrayed her, he had underestimated her. He had deemed her a fragile, delicate thing to be set aside, managed, and lied to. He saw her as a domestic accessory to his grand public life. Her hand trembled as she picked up her phone. The tears stopped. Her breathing evened out, becoming slow and deliberate. She scrolled through her contacts past Andrew with its heart emoji, past the names of their society friends who were likely at the gala right now watching this charade and whispering. Her finger stopped on a name she hadn't called in almost 2 years, a name Andrew had subtly but effectively pushed out of her life. Uncle Marcus Thorne, her mother's younger brother, a man who dealt not in venture capital, but in cold, hard logistics and private security. A man Andrew had once called a glorified thug before dismissing him as beneath their new social strata. Marcus, who had warned her on her wedding day, men who build empires on charm always have a second hidden set of books. Be careful, Bella. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This was a line she could not uncross. Calling Marcus was an admission of failure, an admission that his cynical warning had been prophecy. But staying here in this beautiful cage was not an option. Andrew had wanted her to be invisible tonight. He was about to learn that Isabella Rossi Croft, when pushed, did not just become visible. She became a spectacle. She pressed the button. He answered on the second ring, his voice as gravelly as she remembered. Isabella, it's been a while. Uncle Marcus, she said, her own voice shockingly steady. I need a favor, a big one, and I need it tonight. There was a pause. She could almost hear the cogs turning in his shrewd mind. What do you need, kid? Isabella looked at her reflection one last time, at the woman in the midnight blue gown who was meant to be admired on a red carpet. A new, audacious, terrifying plan began to form in her mind. I need a helicopter, she said, and I need to land it on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a full 10 seconds. Isabella could picture her uncle perfectly leaning back in a worn leather chair in some nondescript office in Queens, a tumbler of whiskey likely within reach, his brow furrowed. Marcus Thorne was a man of immense capability, but little patience for frivolity. You want to land a helicopter, he finally said, his voice flat, on the roof of the Met, during the Legacy Gala. Yes, Isabella said, her resolve hardening with every second that passed. That's not a favor, Isabella. That's a federal offense, a logistical nightmare, and a public relations apocalypse rolled into one. Why in God's name would you want to do that? Isabella took a deep breath, the smell of her own expensive, unused perfume, thick in the air. She told him everything. The lie about Dr. Evans, Andrew's manufactured concern, the society blog photo, Serafina Dubois. The name seemed to leave a bitter taste in her own mouth. When she finished, there was another pause. This one was different. It was charged heavy with a shared history. That son of a bitch! Marcus finally growled, the gravel in his voice, now mixed with flint. I told you from the beginning. Men like Andrew Croft don't have partners. They have assets. He wanted the Rossi name when he was a nobody, and now that he's a somebody, he wants the Dubois connection. Isabella flinched. The Rossi name wasn't royalty, but it was old New York. Her family had been in construction building parts of the city's skyline before they fell on harder times. The name still carried a weight of integrity that Andrew, the brash newcomer, had found useful in his early days. It lent him a veneer of class he desperately craved. I know, Marcus. You were right, she whispered. The admission was painful but necessary. But right now, I don't need, I told you so. I need your help. He thinks I'm at home sick and helpless. He needs to see that he's wrong. Everyone needs to see it. And you think a chopper is the way to do that. He's in that ballroom making a deal based on a lie, she said, her voice rising with a passion she hadn't felt in years. His entire image is built on control and perfection. I'm not just going to walk in the front door and make a scene. That's what he'd expect a hysterical wife to do. No, I'm going to descend from the sky like an act of God. I'm going to reclaim the narrative in a way no one can ignore. Marcus was quiet for a moment. She heard the clink of a glass, the glug of a bottle. It's not just about the girl, is it, kid? What do you mean? The Dubois deal. Andrew's been leveraged to the hilt for 2 years. Croft Innovations looks like a diamond from the outside, but it's hollow. He's been shuffling money, taking insane risks. Without Alistair Dubois' capital infusion, he's not just going to lose face. He's going to lose everything. He's probably a month away from total collapse. Isabella sank back onto the ottoman, the phone pressed hard against her ear. This was the second gut punch of the evening. Andrew wasn't just cheating on her to climb higher, he was cheating on her to stop from falling. The betrayal felt even deeper, more calculated. He had not only lied about his fidelity, but about the very foundation their life was built on. Their penthouse, their cars, the donations, the baby's future. It was all a house of cards. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because after he pushed me out of your life, I made it my business to know his," Marcus said simply. There was no malice in his voice, only a weary pragmatism. "I never trusted him. I had one of my guys, a forensic accountant, keep an eye on his company's public filings and market whispers. The man is a gambler who thinks he's a genius. This Dubois deal is his Hail Mary." The fury inside Isabella solidified into something cold and sharp, like a shard of ice. This was no longer just about a cheating husband. It was about survival. It was about the future of her child, a future Andrew had mortgaged without her knowledge. "So you see, Marcus," she said, her voice now devoid of any tremor. "I'm not just going there to confront my husband. I'm going there to disrupt a transaction built on deceit. My deceit. The lie of our perfect, stable life." A slow, dry chuckle came down the line. It was the sound of a man who appreciated audacity. Landing on the roof is still a fantasy. The NYPD would have the pilot in cuffs before the skids touched down. But the Cantor Roof Garden Bar, it's part of the Gala tonight. An outdoor terrace. Technically, it's private airspace for the event. If a chopper were to hover, say, 50 feet above it and lower a passenger, that's not landing. That's a personnel drop. It's a gray area, a very, very gray area. Hope, fierce and bright, surged through Isabella. "Can you do it? I have a pilot Special Forces who owes me more than one favor. He's crazy enough to do it." The bird is a new Sikorsky S-76. It's sitting in a private hangar in Teterboro. Quiet, fast, and black. "Very dramatic," Marcus said. "But Bella, you need to be sure. Once you do this, there's no going back. The life you have, the man you thought you married, it all burns to the ground tonight. You understand that, right?" Isabella looked around the opulent dressing room. The rows of designer shoes, the silk scarves arranged by color, the jewelry box glittering with diamonds, she now realized were likely bought with borrowed money. It wasn't her life. It was a costume. It was a cage. "Let it burn," she said. "All right, kid." Marcus's voice was all business now. "Here's the plan. You have 1 hour. Get dressed. Not just the gown. Wear something underneath it. Something warm. It's cold up there. Pack a small bag with essentials. My man Dimitri will be at your service entrance in 20 minutes. The doormen know him. He's delivered things for me before. He'll get you out of the building without anyone on Andrew's staff seeing you. He'll take you to the West 30th Street heliport. From there, it's a 12-minute flight to the Met. I'll handle the logistics from my end. I'll be your eye in the sky, so to speak, feeding you information." He paused again. "Bella." "Yes. I'm proud of you, kid. Your mother would be too. She never bent, not for anyone." That was all she needed. The connection to her late mother, a fiercely independent woman, was the final piece of armor she buckled into place. She hung up the phone and moved with a purpose she hadn't felt in years. She stripped off her silk robe and put on a practical pair of black leggings and a cashmere sweater under the gown. The midnight blue silk settled over her, no longer a symbol of her humiliation, but a declaration of war. She slipped on a pair of elegant but sturdy flat shoes, forgoing the stilettos that sat waiting. She packed a small purse, her wallet, her phone a charger, and the keys to a small apartment her mother had left her in Brooklyn, a place Andrew didn't even know existed. As she gave herself one last look in the mirror, she was no longer the sad, betrayed wife. Her eyes were clear and bright, with a chilling fire. The swell of her pregnancy was not a vulnerability, but a source of strength. She was fighting for two now. 20 minutes later, the service elevator chimed softly. Dmitri was exactly as she'd pictured, a large, silent man in a dark suit who simply nodded and took her small bag. He led her through the labyrinthine back corridors of the building, a world of concrete floors and buzzing fluorescent lights she never knew existed, and out into the cool night air where a black town car was waiting, its engine humming. As the car pulled away from the curb, Isabella looked up at the penthouse, a beacon of golden light against the dark sky. Her gilded cage. Andrew thought she was in there sleeping. He was celebrating his victory, his brilliant maneuver. He had no idea that his perfectly managed asset was on the move, and that the storm about to break over the Metropolitan Legacy Gala was named Isabella. The roar of the helicopter blades was a physical force, a primal heartbeat that vibrated through the plush leather seat and up into Isabella's very bones. Below her, New York City was a breathtaking tapestry of light, a glittering circuit board of human ambition and dreams. The view from her penthouse had been beautiful, but it was static, a painting behind glass. This was different. This was movement. This was power. The pilot, the ex-Special Forces operative Marcus had called Nikolai, hadn't said a word to her beyond a curt ma'am when she'd boarded at the Teterboro hangar. He handled the controls of the sleek black Sikorsky with an unnerving calm, his face illuminated in the green glow of the instrument panel. As they sliced through the night sky, Marcus's voice crackled in her ear through a discreet earpiece. "All right, Bella, we're 5 minutes out. The gala is in full swing." Andrew just finished his speech, laid the charm on thick. He thanked the board, the donors, and his beautiful, brilliant wife Isabella, who is sadly at home tonight, but is his constant inspiration. The crowd ate it up. A bitter laugh escaped Isabella's lips. Of course he had. He was polishing his halo, using her absence to paint himself as a devoted husband. Serafina was front and center. Marcus continued, his voice a low grumble. Sat with her father Alistair. They looked like the goddamn royal family. They're on the Cantor roof garden now, the whole group of them. The Northern Terrace. It's a private reception for key partners. That's our target. Let them have their moment, Isabella said, her voice steady against the thrum of the rotors. She looked down at her hands, resting on her pregnant belly. The baby kicked a small, reassuring flutter. "I'm with you, Mom." She had spent the flight from the heliport in a state of suspended animation, a strange calm settling over her. The shock and the grief had been burned away, leaving behind a pure, cold purpose. She was no longer reacting to Andrew's betrayal. She was executing a strategy. Marcus's intel had been the key. This wasn't just a personal war, it was a corporate one, and she was about to launch the most hostile of takeovers. "Nikolai is starting his descent," Marcus reported. "He's going to circle once over the park to mask his approach vector. The event has a security detail, but they're looking for threats on the ground, not from above. They'll hear us before they see us." Isabella braced herself. "Tell me when." The helicopter banked, and suddenly the vast darkness of Central Park was replaced by the brightly lit rectangle of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She could see them now, tiny figures milling about on the rooftop terrace, illuminated by fairy lights and the glow of the city. They looked like dolls in a dollhouse, a world of perfect illusions about to be shattered. "They hear you now," Marcus said, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. "Heads are turning. People are looking up confused." Nikolai brought the helicopter in, not with a sudden alarming rush, but with a slow, deliberate, and terrifying grace. He wasn't approaching to land. He was positioning the aircraft like a predator, cornering its prey. The sound must have been deafening on the ground. Now the polite chatter and clinking champagne glasses drowned out by the thunderous whomp-whomp-whomp of the blades. A brilliant searchlight from the bottom of the helicopter flared to life, cutting through the ambient light and pinning the northern terrace in a stark white glare. "Showtime, kid," Marcus said. From her vantage point, Isabella could see the chaos she was creating. People were shielding their eyes, stumbling back. Security guards were speaking frantically into their radios, their authority utterly useless against this airborne invasion. And then she saw him, Andrew. He stood frozen in the center of the beam of light, a champagne flute halfway to his lips. His face, usually a mask of suave confidence, was a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock. Beside him, Seraphina Dubois recoiled, her hand flying to her perfectly styled hair as the rotor wash whipped around them. Alistair Dubois, a man who had likely never been surprised a day in his life, simply stared upwards, his expression unreadable but palpably tense. The side door of the helicopter slid open, and the cold night air rushed in. Nikolai gave her a thumbs up without turning his head. A small, sturdy winch mechanism lowered a thin but strong-looking rope harness. This was it. Isabella took a deep breath. She unbuckled her seatbelt, stood, and moved to the open door. The wind tore at her, whipping the midnight blue silk of her gown around her legs. She was a figure of impossible drama, a pregnant woman in an evening gown, appearing from a black gunship helicopter in the sky above the most elite party in New York. She clipped the harness securely around her waist. The mechanism was simple, designed for rapid deployment. She gave a firm tug, ensuring it was locked. "He sees you, Bella." Marcus's voice was low and intense in her ear. "The light is on you now. They all see you." She stepped onto the skid, one hand holding onto the frame of the helicopter, the other resting on her stomach. The searchlight shifted, illuminating her fully. On the terrace below, a collective gasp was almost audible, even over the rotors. Cell phones were coming out, dozens of them, their small screens now pointed at her. The society bloggers, the journalists, the rival CEOs, the gossips, they were all her audience. And then, with a final look down at the man who had broken her heart and tried to erase her, she let go. The winch was smooth, lowering her with a steady, controlled speed. She didn't flail or cry out. She descended with the poise of a queen. Her silver-threaded gown glittered in the searchlight, the silk billowing around her. She was not a hysterical wife. She was not a victim. She was an avenging angel, a Valkyrie descending upon the battlefield. She saw Andrew's face change from shock to horror, then to a dawning, panicked rage. He started to move towards the edge of the terrace, his mouth opening and closing, but his words were lost to the wind and the blades. 10 feet from the ground, the winch slowed. 5 feet. She unclipped the harness with a practiced click, just as Nikolai had shown her. She landed on the stone tiles of the Cantor roof garden as lightly as a falling feather, her flat shoes finding firm purchase. The helicopter did not linger. As soon as she was clear, it ascended rapidly, the searchlight cutting out, and vanished back into the darkness of the New York night, as quickly and mysteriously as it had appeared. Silence descended, a stunned, absolute silence, broken only by the frantic clicking of phone cameras. The wind gently tossed her hair, her gown settled around her. She stood there for a moment, letting the image burn itself into the memory of every single person present. She smoothed the front of her dress over her baby bump, a deliberate maternal gesture that was also a powerful statement. Then she lifted her chin, and her gaze found Andrew's across the terrace. The party was over. The reckoning had begun. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, the tableau on the rooftop held frozen in disbelief. Isabella stood alone, a vision in midnight blue, the city lights framing her like a halo. Andrew remained paralyzed near the balustrade, his face a mask of ashen fury. Serafina, her poise shattered, looked from Isabella to Andrew and back again, her expression curdling from shock to indignation. But it was the cold, assessing gaze of Alistair Dubois that held the most weight. He hadn't moved a muscle, but his eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing. The spell was broken by Isabella. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another. The sound of her flat shoes on the stone was the only sound in the world. The crowd of onlookers parted before her as if she were Moses and they the Red Sea. They were no longer party guests. They were spectators at a gladiatorial contest, and they could not look away. She walked directly towards the trio, her eyes locked on her husband. "Andrew," she said. Her voice wasn't a shout. It was worse. It was calm, clear, and carried across the terrace with chilling precision. "You told me Dr. Evans said I was unwell. You said I needed to rest. Funny, when I spoke to her office this afternoon, they seemed to think I was in perfect health. They were so looking forward to seeing us both here tonight." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. She saw Andrew flinch. She saw the flicker of panic in his eyes as he tried to regain control. "Isabella, what is the meaning of this?" he hissed, taking a step towards her, trying to lower his voice to bring this back into the realm of the private. "You've lost your mind. Creating a scene like this, a scene?" Isabella laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You're right. I should have just stayed home like a good obedient wife, shouldn't I, while you were here showing face?" "Is this showing face, Andrew?" She gestured with an elegant, dismissive wave towards Serafina. Serafina, who had been momentarily silenced by the sheer audacity of the entrance, found her voice. "And who do you think you are?" she snapped, stepping forward, trying to reclaim her position at Andrew's side. "Crashing a private party like some—" "I am Isabella Rossi Croft." Isabella cut her off, her gaze turning to Serafina with an arctic coldness that made the other woman physically recoil. The beautiful, brilliant wife Andrew just toasted in his speech. The woman carrying his child. And you, my dear, are the supporting actress in a very, very cheap play. Don't mistake your role for a leading one. The insult, delivered with such surgical precision, hit its mark. A flush of angry color rose in Serafina's cheeks. She looked to Andrew for defense, but he was staring at Isabella, his mind clearly racing, trying to calculate the damage. He tried a different tack, the one that had always worked before: concern. "Bella, my love, you're not well. You're pregnant, you're emotional. Let's go home. We can talk about this at home." He reached for her arm. Isabella pulled away as if his touch were fire. "Don't you dare," she whispered, her voice low and venomous. "Don't you dare try to gaslight me in front of all these people. My mind has never been clearer. I see everything now. This isn't about us, is it? It was never about a simple, sordid affair. Her eyes flicked to Alistair Dubois, who was watching the exchange with the predatory stillness of a shark that has scented blood in the water. "This is about him," Isabella said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "This is about his money. You lied to me. You locked me away in my own home so you could parade his daughter around and close your deal. A deal I now know that you need to stop your entire company from imploding." The gasp that rippled through the onlookers was far louder this time. This was more than marital drama. This was business. This was blood. Andrew's face went from white to a blotchy, furious red. "That is a slanderous lie," he roared, finally losing his composure. "Is it?" Isabella challenged, taking another step closer until they were only feet apart. "Is it a lie that Croft Innovations is leveraged to 90% of its value? Is it a lie that you've been cooking the books on your quarterly reports, moving assets between shell corporations to hide the losses? Is it a lie that without Mr. Dubois' capital, you'll have to declare bankruptcy within a month?" She was repeating the information Marcus had fed her, but she delivered it with the conviction of a seasoned prosecutor. She saw the truth of it, not just in Andrew's horrified silence, but in the subtle yet seismic shift in Alistair Dubois's posture. He looked at Andrew, then at his daughter, and a look of profound, icy disgust settled on his face. He had been played for a fool, his daughter used as a pawn in the desperate gamble of a failing charlatan. "Serafina," Alistair said, his voice a low command that cut through all the drama. "Come here." Serafina, looking utterly humiliated, hesitated for a moment, then scurried to her father's side like a chastised child. Alistair looked Andrew up and down, his eyes filled with contempt. "Mr. Croft," he said, his British accent making the words sound even more damning. "My daughter informed me you were a rising star. It appears she and I were misinformed. You are not a star. You are a supernova, a brilliant flash destined to collapse into a black hole. We will not be investing in a black hole. This conversation and any potential partnership is over." He put a firm hand on his daughter's back. "We are leaving." And with that, the kingpin of the evening turned and walked away, his humiliated daughter in tow. He didn't rush. He simply departed, and with him went Andrew Croft's last hope. Andrew stood there, utterly exposed, the foundations of his world turned to dust in less than 10 minutes. The whispers around them were growing louder now, the cell phone cameras still recording his ruin. He turned on Isabella, his eyes blazing with a hatred that was terrifying to behold. "You, he seethed, his voice trembling with rage. "You have ruined me." "No, Andrew," Isabella said, her voice softening not with pity, but with a profound and final sadness. "You ruined yourself. I just turned on the lights." She didn't need a dramatic exit. The helicopter was the entrance, the statement of power. Her departure would be one of quiet dignity. She turned her back on him, on the life he had built for her, on the man she had once loved beyond all measure. The crowd parted for her again, but this time the looks were different. They were no longer just watching a spectacle. They were watching a woman who had been wronged, a woman who had fought back with breathtaking intelligence and heart and courage. They were watching a victor. She walked across the terrace through the glass doors and into the now hushed ballroom. She didn't look back. She walked past the gawking security guards, down the grand staircase, and out the front doors of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, her head held high. The cool night air felt clean. She was no longer Isabella Croft, the wife in the gilded cage. She was Isabella Rossi, a free woman walking into the rest of her life. A black town car, the same one from before, pulled up silently to the curb. Dmitri got out and opened the door for her. As she slid inside, she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the end of the beginning. The real work and the real rebuilding was about to start. The digital explosion was instantaneous and absolute. Before Isabella had even settled into the worn armchair in her mother's Brooklyn apartment, the world was on fire with her story. The first wave was pure, unadulterated sensationalism. The New York Post splashed a full-page photo of her suspended in the helicopter's searchlight across its front page with the screaming headline, "Helicopter Wife." Tabloid sites, hungry for clicks, churned out a dozen variations. Gala takedown, spurned pregnant wife's billion-dollar revenge, and from penthouse to predator, the fall of Andrew Croft. Her image was everywhere, a meme, a gif, a symbol of righteous fury. The second wave was more analytical and in many ways more dangerous for Andrew. The financial press publications like the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg bypassed the salacious details of the affair and seized upon the public accusation she had hurled like a grenade that Croft Innovations was a house of cards. Journalists began digging. Analysts who had long been quietly skeptical of Andrew's meteoric rise now spoke on the record. Whispers about over-leveraging and unsustainable growth became front-page news. The stock, which had wobbled after Alistair Dubois's public exit from the Gala, went into a catastrophic freefall. Isabella observed the chaos from the quiet sanctuary of the apartment on Brooklyn Heights. The space itself was a balm to her soul. Where the penthouse had been a testament to cold modern wealth, all glass chrome, and impersonal art, this apartment was a testament to a life well lived. The air smelled of old books and lemon polish. The hardwood floors creaked with history. Here she wasn't a symbol. She was just Isabella, her mother's daughter. "You've created the perfect storm," Marcus said, handing her a steaming mug of chamomile tea. He'd been her rock, a stoic fortress, against the swirling vortex of media and legal threats. He'd changed the numbers on her phone and vetted every call, every email, creating a bubble of calm for her to think. "The tabloids have made you a folk hero, and the financial papers are gutting him alive. He's trapped." "He's not trapped yet." Isabella countered, her gaze distant as she looked out the window at the stoic grey cables of the Brooklyn Bridge. "He's a cornered animal. That's when he's most dangerous. The letter his lawyer sent proves it." The letter had been a masterclass in veiled threats and dismissive arrogance. It offered a sum of money that a week ago would have seemed astronomical. In exchange, she was to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so restrictive it would have prevented her from telling her own child the truth of his father's character. It was an attempt to erase her, to buy her story and bury it. "He still thinks he's dealing with the woman who arranged his dinner parties," Isabella mused, a flicker of the old hurt surfacing before being extinguished by cold resolve. "He thinks he can write a check and make this all go away. He's about to get a rude awakening," Marcus said, his voice grim. "The meeting is set for tomorrow. His lawyer's our lawyer, a neutral boardroom. Are you ready for this?" Isabella placed a hand on the ever-growing curve of her stomach. The baby was quiet, as if listening. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life, Marcus. He took my love and used it as a shield while he gambled with our future. Tomorrow isn't about revenge. It's about restitution." The next day, she chose her armor carefully. Not a power suit, but simple, elegant black trousers and a cream-colored silk blouse that didn't hide her pregnancy, but framed it. She was not there as a corporate warrior, but as a mother protecting her legacy. The boardroom was on the 40th floor of a featureless glass tower in Midtown, a sterile space designed for bloodless negotiations. The air was thick with tension. Andrew and his two lawyers were already seated, a phalanx of expensive suits and grim faces. Andrew himself looked like a ghost. His bespoke suit hung on him, and the charismatic glow he once radiated had been replaced by a sallow, exhausted pallor. The circles under his eyes were darker than his tie. When Isabella walked in with Marcus, a steady, imposing presence just behind her, Andrew visibly straightened, a flicker of the old arrogance attempting to reassert itself. He stood. "Isabella," he began, his voice raspy, attempting a tone of pained reason. "This is madness. We can resolve this. My offer is incredibly generous. It secures your future, the child's future. There is no need for this ugliness." Isabella didn't respond to him directly. She walked to the head of the table, a position his lawyer had to vacate, and took her seat. She looked at Andrew's lead attorney, a man named Sterling, whose reputation for ruthless litigation was legendary. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice even and calm, "your client seems to be under the impression that he is in a position to be making offers. I suggest you advise him that his position is far more precarious than he understands." Sterling gave a condescending smile. "Mrs. Croft, Isabella, we understand you're emotional, but the fact is, a messy public divorce will damage your reputation as much as my client's. The offer on the table is the best path forward for everyone. It allows you to walk away with dignity and immense wealth." Marcus let out a short, sharp laugh that made Sterling flinch. He placed a thick, black leather portfolio in the center of the polished mahogany table. The sound it made was definitive, final. "Dignity," Marcus growled. "You want to talk about dignity? Open the book." Sterling slid the portfolio towards him with a theatrical sigh, as if humoring a child. He opened it. His eyes scanned the first page. The condescending smile vanished. His jaw tightened. He flipped to the second page, his breathing becoming shallow. He began to see not just numbers, but a pattern, a meticulously executed strategy. He looked up first at Marcus, then at Isabella, a new and alarming respect dawning in his eyes. He pushed the portfolio towards Andrew. Andrew frowned, confused by his lawyer's reaction. He opened it. He saw the names of his lenders, the ones who held the high-risk, high-interest notes he'd taken out to cover his losses. And next to them, he saw the dates of transfer, all within the last 6 months, and the name of the acquiring entity, Thorne Equity Partners, an advisory client of Marcus Thorne. He looked up at Isabella, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. "What is this?" This was Isabella's moment. She leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "You always saw me as a creature of art and society, Andrew. You never once thought to ask about my family's business acumen. You saw the Rossi name as a charming relic. You were mistaken." She let the words hang in the air. "My mother was a very shrewd woman. She left me a significant trust, managed by the shrewdest man I know." She nodded to Marcus. "A trust you were never aware of, because you never bothered to see me as a true partner. While you were charming investors and taking bigger and bigger risks, we were taking precautions. While you were digging your hole deeper, we were buying the land around it." Andrew was shaking his head, his face a mask of disbelief. You bought my debt." "I own it," she corrected him, her voice as sharp and clear as diamond. "Every toxic asset every high-risk bond, every desperate loan you took out. When Croft Innovations defaulted on its primary loan covenants last Thursday, a direct result of your public humiliation and the collapse of the Dubois deal, it triggered a cross-default clause on every single note. All of your company's debt became due, and it is due to me. The room was utterly silent. The granite-faced lawyers were stunned into immobility. Andrew looked as if he'd been physically struck. The entire architecture of his reality had just been dismantled before his eyes. He wasn't in a negotiation. He was at his own surrender. "What do you want?" He finally choked out the words, tasting like ash in his mouth. "I want to salvage something of value from the wreckage you created," she said, her voice resonating with a power he had never heard from her. "I want a future for my child that isn't tainted by your fraud." Croft Innovations employs over 500 people, Andrew. Families. People who trusted you, who worked hard for you while you gambled away their security. I will not let them pay the price for your ego. She laid out her terms, not as a request, but as a verdict. You will sign over your full controlling interest in the company to me as payment against the debt you cannot possibly honor. You will tender your resignation as CEO and from the board effective immediately. A press release is already drafted. You will walk away. In exchange, the holding company I now control will not pursue you for personal bankruptcy or fraud, provided you disappear. Quietly and completely. It was an execution delivered with the serene calm of a surgeon. She was taking everything, but offering him the one thing he didn't deserve, a path that didn't end in a federal prison. He stared at her, searching her face for any trace of the soft, adoring woman he had married. She was gone. In her place was a queen, forged in his betrayal. "You would do all this just to destroy me," he whispered. "No, Andrew," she said, and for the first time, a hint of pity touched her voice. "I am doing all this to build something real. You destroyed yourself. I am simply cleaning up the mess." She stood, her business concluded. Marcus rose with her. She paused at the door, her back to him. "The company will be reorganized and rebranded," she stated. "Effective immediately, Croft Innovations ceases to exist." She walked out without a backward glance, leaving him alone in the silent boardroom, with the ruins of his life contained in a single black portfolio. Her first act as chairwoman of the newly minted Rossi Legacy Holdings was not to fire anyone, but to call a meeting of the senior management. She walked into the boardroom, her boardroom, and faced the anxious executives. She laid out the truth of the company's finances and the extent of Andrew's deception. Then she laid out her plan for recovery, a plan built on stability, transparency, and sustainable growth. She promised to honor their work and to build a company they could be proud of. By the end of the meeting, the fear in the room had been replaced by a tentative but palpable hope. That evening, Isabella stood alone in the sprawling CEO office. The city lights glittered below, no longer a distant, taunting spectacle, but a landscape of responsibility. She looked down, not at a party, but at the thousands of windows representing the lives that were now in some way tethered to her decisions. She felt her baby kick, a strong, insistent thump. This was it. This was the legacy. Not a name on a building, but a foundation of integrity. A promise to her child that their name, the Rossi name, would stand for strength, for resilience, and for the unwavering courage to build anew from the ashes. From the depths of heartbreak in a Fifth Avenue penthouse to the pinnacle of power in a Manhattan boardroom, Isabella's story is a powerful testament to the fire that can be forged in the face of betrayal. She wasn't just a scorned wife, she was a woman who was profoundly underestimated. She took the pain of a lie and transformed it into a strategy, trading tears for tactics and despair for determination. Her grand entrance was more than just revenge. It was a reclamation of her identity, her power, and her future. It's a reminder that the people others try to cast in the shadows are often the ones with the most brilliant light to shine. Have you ever felt underestimated? Has someone ever tried to write your story for you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Isabella's story of strength and resilience resonated with you, show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power, and be sure to subscribe for more incredible true-life dramas. Your next favorite story is just one click away.